hours of collecting food from your local grocery store dumpsters, and this is an everyday occurrence in almost every city.
Every night in America, roughly 266,000 people sleep outside with nothing between them and the cold. Somewhere within a few blocks of almost every one of them sits a dumpster holding more food than they could eat in a week. But that's not an accident. The USDA says the country throws away something like 133 billion pounds of edible food every single year, close to 40% of the entire food supply. The real question here has nothing to do with willpower, not even close. It's why anyone standing 5 feet from a full dumpster is still going hungry.
We do not have a shortage of food in the United States. The only thing we have is a distribution problem.
Start with the money, because that's where every myth about this begins. People imagine homelessness as a total absence of resources, like the street strips a person down to nothing and leaves them with no way to eat except begging on a corner. The numbers tell a different story. A single grocery store throws away produce every single day just for looking wrong. A bruised apple gets tossed with 4 good ones still sitting in the same bag. A shipment of bread that's 1 day past its sell-by date gets bagged whole and rolled out back, even though sell-by has almost nothing to do with whether the bread is actually safe to eat. It's a marketing date, not a biology one, nothing more. Robin Greenfield, who spent years documenting dumpsters across more than 24 states, has pulled tens of thousands of dollars of usable food out of the trash behind ordinary stores. Not damaged food, not spoiled food, food that failed a display standard, not a safety one. For someone with nothing in their pocket, that failure is an entire meal plan waiting behind a building people walk past every day without a second glance. The first surprise at the bin has nothing to do with smell, it's the weight of it. The way the lid barely closes over cardboard boxes still holding their shape, still cold from the walk-in an hour earlier. Underneath the top layer of wilted lettuce and flattened boxes, there's usually a second layer that never touched anything rotten at all. Knowing the food exists and knowing where to find it are 2 separate survival skills, and this is where it stops being simple. Not every dumpster is created equal, not by a long shot. Learning the difference takes weeks, sometimes months of trial and error, plus a few wasted trips that teach you the hard way. Grocery stores are the jackpot for produce and bread. But a lot of them lock their bins now, especially in neighborhoods where management already expects people to come looking after dark. Convenience stores and gas stations turn over hot food several times a day, so the pizza slices and the rotisserie chicken sometimes hit the bins still warm from the case. Pharmacies are the quiet gold mine nobody talks about. Boxes of cereal, bottled water, toothpaste, tossed for a dented corner or a torn wrapper, with the product completely untouched inside the box. A route gets learned the way a delivery driver learns traffic patterns. Which store's dumpster gets emptied at 6 in the morning? Which one fills back up again by 9 at night? Some people work a circuit of 6 or 7 stores in a single evening, spaced out across a couple of miles, timing each stop around the closing shift, so the freshest throwaways are still sitting right on top. The schedule of a building nobody was ever hired to work in, memorized anyway, because the next meal depends on getting there before the truck does. 10 minutes late can mean a full bag or an empty one, and the truck doesn't wait for anybody. Once the food is actually found, keeping it usable is its own separate skill, one nobody teaches and everybody has to figure out alone. There's no fridge on a park bench. Meat and dairy get eaten first, the same day, before heat or time turns them dangerous. Bread and packaged snacks get stretched, rationed out over several days, because they're the items that survive being carried around in a backpack without spoiling. Some people build a rotation with 2 or 3 regular spots, so no single dumpster gets stripped bare and management never notices a pattern worth locking a lid over. Others trade with whoever else is working the same block that night. A can of soup for a sleeve of crackers. because sharing what you can't finish beats watching it go bad in a bag. Food is only half of what a dumpster or a donation bin ends up providing. Clothing donation boxes overflow constantly, and the contents are rarely rags. A barely worn winter coat, a pair of boots with the tags still zip-tied to the laces, a sleeping bag someone upgraded and never thought twice about tossing. Pharmacies throw out unopened first aid supplies over a torn box flap. Hardware stores toss batteries that failed 1 out of 100 quality tests but still work fine in a flashlight. None of it shows up in the popular image of someone going through the trash, but for a person building a kit to survive outside through a full winter, the coat matters just as much as the calories, and sometimes it's the difference that actually keeps them alive overnight. That's the logistics. The harder part starts once someone is actually standing over the bin, because now the calculation shifts from where to eat to whether it's safe to. This is where people who've never had to do it get it wrong the worst. And it's also where a single bad guess can cost more than a meal. Packaged food behind a broken seal, an unopened yogurt cup, a sealed bag of frozen vegetables still frosted over. These are close to a sure thing. An open container, meat that's been sitting out since the lunch rush on a 90-degree afternoon. Anything that smells even slightly off. That's the line between a free dinner and an emergency room bill nobody can pay. Someone doing this for real develops a kind of triage instinct fast. Check the seal before the smell. Every time. Trust a closed package over an open one. Skip anything that touched raw meat packaging, even if the item itself looks fine, because a wrong guess costs more than a bad night. It means getting sick with no bed to recover in, and no one checking on you in the morning. And even when the food is good, there's a part of this almost nobody films, and it has nothing to do with nutrition at all. It's the moment a manager comes out the back door and finds someone elbow deep in a bin behind his store. Some of them shrug and walk back inside without a word. Some call the police right there on the spot. No warning, no hesitation. Dumpster diving is technically legal in most places, as long as no one is trespassing to reach the bin, a fact that traces back to a Supreme Court ruling that trash left out for collection loses its expectation of privacy once it hits the curb. Legal on paper and legal in practice are two different things when the person deciding whether to call it in is standing right there with a phone in his hand. The shame of being caught mid-search, of a stranger's flashlight catching you crouched in garbage at 11 at night, does more damage to some people than the hunger ever did. There's a specific kind of silence that follows that flashlight beam. The sound of someone deciding, in real time, whether to say something or just keep walking. That cost never shows up on a receipt. It gets measured in how many times a person can be seen like that before they stop caring what anyone thinks, which is its own strange kind of survival, harder to explain to someone who's never needed it. Some people start timing their searches for the dead hours between midnight and 4 in the morning, specifically to avoid that moment altogether, trading sleep for privacy, because privacy is the one thing a shelter bed and a park bench both fail to provide. Then there's the season, because everything above gets worse the second the temperature drops. Summer heat spoils food fast, but at least the body isn't burning calories just to stay alive while it searches. Winter flips the whole equation. The same person looking for food now also has to find enough of it to fuel a body losing heat around the clock, all while frozen sidewalks, ice on the loading dock, and 6 fewer hours of daylight cut down the window a search can even happen in. A meal that would have been more than enough in July isn't close to enough in January. And the dumpsters that stayed reliable all summer sometimes freeze shut overnight or vanish under snow nobody's clearing for you. Fingers go numb before the lid does. Every time. Pulling a plastic bag apart with hands that won't fully close takes twice as long as it should. Breath fogs up in front of a flashlight beam. Every constraint from before doesn't disappear once winter hits. It stacks on top of a body that's now also fighting to hold its own core temperature. So the margin for one wrong guess, one unsafe meal, one missed pickup window before the truck comes, shrinks down to almost nothing. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being just one person scavenging alone in the dark and turned into something closer to an actual supply chain. In Montreal, a man named Guillaume Girard collects surplus bread from bakeries at closing time, produce from community gardens, and food already headed for dumpsters, then drives it to a church lawn where a crowd, sometimes more than 100 people, lines up to fill grocery bags for free. By dumpster diving, you're redistributing the wealth, he says. And in a literal sense, that's exactly what's happening. He isn't creating a single ounce of new food. He's rerouting food that was already grown, already trucked in, already paid for, and already scheduled for a landfill, and putting it directly into hands that need it that same night. What looks from the outside like someone digging through garbage out of pure desperation is, for a growing number of people, a deliberate system built on a fact the rest of us mostly manage to ignore. The waste was always going to happen either way. The choice left over is whether it happens into a landfill or into a stomach. Food banks and soup kitchens exist too, and plenty of people use both, the free hot meal at noon and the dumpster run at midnight, because neither one alone covers every gap. A shelter kitchen runs on a schedule, closed doors after a certain hour, limited seats, sometimes a line, that runs out of food before it runs out of people. Miss the window by 20 minutes and the door is already locked. A dumpster doesn't check hours or capacity, it's just there, filled again tomorrow, whether anyone shows up tonight or not. Nobody checks ID, nobody hands out a form or asks a question someone might not want to answer. For someone whose day doesn't run on anyone else's clock, that difference matters more than it sounds like it should. It's the reason a person can eat 2 meals from a soup kitchen line and a dumpster in the same 24 hours and consider that a good day, not a desperate one. And that detail should probably bother you more than the image of someone climbing into a dumpster ever could. This isn't a story about scarcity, not even a little. It's a story about distribution. The food exists. The bread exists. The produce exists in quantities so large that supermarkets in wealthy countries have had to build entire donation logistics networks just to keep up with what they throw away every week. The only thing standing between a hungry person and a full meal, most nights, is a locked lid, a manager's mood, or whether someone happened to check that bin before the truck got there first. Nobody doing this is beating an impossible system through grit alone. They're exploiting the most obvious flaw in a system that produces more than enough food and still lets people go without, night after night, sleeping a few feet from proof that it never had to be this way. So the next time you picture someone climbing into a dumpster for a meal, picture the other side of it too. Picture the sealed loaf of bread going into that same bin an hour earlier, still good, thrown out on a schedule instead of a need. Which part of that picture is actually the strange one? The person eating what got thrown away? Or the system that decided burying good food was easier than making sure it reached someone first? If this kind of hidden survival math is what keeps you watching, there's another video on this channel that goes even deeper into how people make it through with nothing at all. And it picks up almost exactly where this one just left off.